everybody, and welcome to ToRAISE Questions, the doula podcast. Hi, Therese.
Hi, Sarah. It's so exciting, isn't it?
I know.
The doula, it really is exciting. We have a great podcast.
We do. We're doing a case study today, and I really love case studies.
Me
and
too.
We have heard that you guys love case studies. So we are going to be having Violet call in. We've already recorded it, so we know what happened. And I kind of wish one of the things, maybe we can have her back. She's a doula in a rural area.
Right.
And deals with some populations that I think a lot of us are unfamiliar with.
Right.
And it might be interesting to talk to her about what that's like sometimes.
Right.
That didn't play into this case study that much. But so we're going to do that in a minute. But first, we're going to talk about a little bit about some of the workshops that we have coming up. ToLabor is a doula training and certifying organization. And ToLabor sponsors this podcast, which has some costs associated with hosting it, producing it, editing it, all that stuff. ToLabor is the major sponsor. We are interested in looking for other sponsors. If you run a business that would appeal to birth professionals, we have, this is really a podcast about being a doula. So we have a lot of doulas obviously listen, but we also have childbirth educators, midwives, a few OBs, a few nurses.
And some parents to be. Or just parents have also told us.
A lot of prospective birth workers, acupuncturists, massage therapists, prenatal yoga teachers. And when I say a few, I mean a few hundred. We have a pretty big listenership at this point.
And we have them from all over the world too. Right. So and
concentrated in North America, the United States and Canada, but we do have them all over the world.
Right,
Europe,
but definitely
Asia,
North America, because
Australia.
We have a huge following in Canada.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So if you have a business that would appeal to someone who is running a birth business and you would like to advertise, email us at toraisequestions@gmail.com. And then I just also want to shout out to ToLabor, which is the major sponsor of this. ToLabor is a doula training and certifying organization, which means if you are a birth professional and you're listening and you're interested and you have never taken a doula training, please take one with us.
Yes.
If you have taken a doula training and you want to learn more, you want to re-energize your practice, please take one with us. If you've taken one with us before, please take one with us. If you've taken one with another organization, please take one with us.
Well, and here's the other thing, and this is something we hear all the time at the workshops, and I'm sure it was in the workshop that you were a participant in as well, Sarah, one of the few that you took. We hear it. It's everybody should take this workshop,
right?
Because it's so much about our rights, and it's really about life and how to be with other people and how to be with yourself and how to empower your own person so that you can help others find their voice. So it's not exclusively, it is for, it is a training and certification program for doulas, but it is really an education.
Yes.
So we encourage, and I just want to point out that we have lots of workshops coming up.
Lots of workshops in 2015 scheduled all over the country. Look at our website, tolabor.com. If there isn't one in your area and you want to schedule one, we just had someone emailed me and was saying they really want to take it, but they can't afford it. Well, you can host one in your area and then you get to go for free if you help organize it. So
we're working on our 2016 schedule right now. 2015 is basically filled up, except for something very, very specific. You could contact us, but contact us. Contact our workshop coordinator, Nicole.
She's awesome.
Yes, doing a really fabulous job at tolaborworkshops@gmail.com. And she can give you insight as to what it takes to be a sponsor. And there is an interviewing vetting process for it as well. So be aware of that. But please look at the calendar. Consider taking a workshop or helping sponsor one in the future.
Yeah. And one tiny little thing to add, I just wanted to say, so in my other life, aside from being a doula, I do professional marketing and public relations. And so I always want to do this hard sell on ToLabor, and Therese is not naturally a hard seller. But what I wanted to say is there's a lot of organizations out there and they all have their place, and go check them out. Go read, go look at different organizations. If you're thinking about training, go look. You know what we're about if you listen to this podcast. You know what To Labor's about. You know what our trainers are about. ToRAISE teaches a large number of the classes herself as executive director. We have a very personal touch. You know, we don't have a cookie cutter approach. There's nothing bad to be said about other doula organizations. Look, they all have their place, and you figure out the one that works for you, and we hope it's us.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So today we have with us a doula named Violet who lives, we're not going to say where, she lives in a rural part of the East Coast. Welcome, Violet.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hi, Violet. How are you? This is Therese.
Doing fine. Doing very well.
Violet is, so Violet, tell us, how long have you been a doula?
I have been doing professional doula work now for about 4+ years, but actually began attending births for family members, friends. I used to be a house parent. My husband and I were house parents at a maternity home way back in '92. So I first started wetting my feet attending births back then, but more in a friend/mentor role at that facility.
Got it. So how many births have you attended total, do you think? And then how many as a professional doula?
Oh, dear. Okay.
Just roughly, estimate.
Yeah.
If you divide it up that way, it's a little bit hard because I don't exactly know the breakdown. I've attended about 45 births, overall, and probably maybe about 20 or so after turning, professional.
Great. Well, good for you. Good.
So one of the reasons we ask this is we have a variety of doulas listening. We have brand new doulas. We have very experienced doulas. And I like to let people know there are so many paths. You've been doing birth work for a long time. I know that you also have several of your own children that you've had during this. And, there's a lot of paths to birth work. And there's some people who do 10 births a year and some people that do 30 births a year and some people that do 5 births a year.
Right.
So, Violet, you have a birth that you want to talk to us about today, right? Or actually, you said it's one client with 2 births?
Right. It was. She's a repeat client, so I actually attended her first and second birth.
Okay.
Tell us what you're noodling on for this client. What are you thinking about?
Okay. So as I had time to just process the first birth and then the second birth in light of the first birth, I realized this during the first birth as well, that this particular mom had a lot of fears surrounding her birth that I wasn't really able to, in my opinion, I wasn't really able to help her break through, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So these fears were very prevalent in the first birth in terms of, difficulty surrendering to the process, a lot of tenseness and anxiety. In this even manifested itself prior to delivery in terms of the inordinate amount of fear-related, anxiety-based questions she had.
Such as, can you give us an example, maybe?
Like she may have had intense fears surrounding a potential IV administration. She would not allow us to say the word needle or shot or anything that described her possibly having to have an IV.
And how would she express that to you, Ruth, to Violet? How would she express that?
Well, she would just say, I don't want you to use certain words. Don't mention the word needle. Don't mention the word IV. Don't mention the word drawing blood. Nothing that is going to imply that I'm going to experience pain of the needle being inserted. So we kind of had to discuss that in very general, loose, non-descriptive terms.
Interesting.
So, and even as the labor unfolded, she decided she wanted epidural, so we worked through that, but she was extremely paranoid and almost panicky when it came time for them to roll the tool cart in, and she had to be calmed down by me, by Dad, by the nurse. She needed somebody to hold her hand, which is not a problem. I don't mean that it was problematic.
Right.
But it was definitely an inordinate, excessive amount of fear that we just had to work through just in terms of administering the epidural. She needed continual, repeated assurances by the nurse that it wasn't going to be excessively painful, and please make sure that they sterilize the area, and if he's doing it right, can you watch him and making sure, please, just tell me what he's doing before he does it, and let me make sure I'm prepared. Different things like that kind of let me know, wow, this is pretty intense for her.
And when she was, though, still pregnant, and she was expressing to you that she didn't want to hear the needle and how you described it to us just a moment ago, did you question what the background was on that?
I didn't really question it in particular as it related to the needle or the shot being administered or the IV being inserted, because for me it was more of this is her general demeanor when it comes to things that she's uncomfortable with, because it had been displayed during our prenatal period in numerous areas. So it didn't strike as, boy, she's really intensely paranoid about, having any kind of injections, because there was multiple issues that she was a little bit overly concerned with, if that makes sense.
So you felt like she was maybe had an anxiety disorder rather than like a previous trauma or experience. You were feeling like this was just her personality to be anxious.
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a disorder. I just understood her to be more of a very a person requiring a little bit higher maintenance in the area of, managing her stressors.
But as Sarah is saying that you didn't think of it as possibly that there was a trauma in her background, more that this was her personality.
Right.
Okay. So you didn't question whether there was a possible cause.
No.
Okay. So go ahead.
Okay. So as we were, approaching labor, we had a lot of discussions over the phone, some emails, and obviously we had our prenatal visits. But my primary concern is the fact that as labor unfolded, she was very, very tense, very, very tight. Emotionally, she didn't seem to be able to surrender to the birthing process. She never got past the 4 centimeters dilation. Her water had broken up. I would say probably it was about mid-afternoon, and then the following morning, about 7 a.m., we go to the hospital. And she had not been having very steady contractions. They were sort of sporadic, maybe an hour apart, half hour apart during the overnight hours. But anyway, so as labor unfolded, she required just a fair amount of reassurance, which, again, this isn't really a problem.
Right.
I didn't have a problem responding to her and meeting her where she was at. It was just something that I kind of was having difficulty helping her conquer. But anyway, as the labors unfolding, we're talking, and she was, a Christian, so she was comfortable with requesting prayer, and we would sing some, worship songs and those kinds of things, which, she felt comforted with, and her husband was reading her scriptures. So those were things that were evident and were a source of comfort for her. But
well, that's good.
Not enough to just help her manage. Her dad was there, and her dad was a very significant fortifying part of her in general. So he would talk to her. He would remind her of, her beliefs and promises that she needed to hold on to and encourage her. And he would, initiate singing with her, and they would sing together. And it was really a really sweet atmosphere. But all in all, she still was very somewhat panicky at times, very distraught and overly worried and anxious and tense. So if we could fast forward a little bit to 2 years later, when baby, number 2 comes along, and she contacted me. And to be honest, I felt that she had made a lot of improvement when when she talked to me. She contacted me at week 38, very apologetic. I'm so sorry, but, we decided just to transfer to midwifery care, and she decided to transfer to midwifery care at week 36. So it was sort of late in the ball game, but it was a good move, Anyway, so she was very excited with all the VBAC research she had done.
Oh, did she? I'm sorry, Violet.
I forgot to mention.
Yeah, so she ended up with a C-section?
Yes, she did. And the C-section wasn't in terms of, any distress. It was more failure to progress type of situation.
Mm-hmm.
So after, when she contacted me and she said, we've been doing so much research about getting a VBAC. We've decided to change to midwifery care. I feel like, we can possibly do this. I wanted your support. And I've been just trying to, think back to, what happened with baby number one and just kind of work through some things and wanted you to come alongside of us. So, of course, I was just, tickled to participate. But then again, some of the same issues, manifested during this second labor. And unfortunately, because of the time constraint, we were only able to have one prenatal. But even at that prenatal, I really felt like she was in a much better place mentally. And I felt that she, with all the research that she was doing in terms of VBAC stats and different things like that, and comfort measures and ways to, possibly increase her odds at a VBAC, I still felt that she was at a better place. And her husband, they were both on the same page, so there was no issues, between them. Everything was, pretty nice. But there again, in the second labor, I just felt that there was fear factors going on, not as excessively as I saw in the first birth, but they were still evident. And as a matter of fact, with this particular labor, she never got past about 5 or so.
How far did she get with the other one? With the first,
the other one, she only got to 4.
At 4, and when did she get the? Did she get an epidural the first time at 4 centimeters and never went past that, or did she get that epidural before even 4 centimeters?
I honestly don't remember where she was at in terms of when she got her
epidural.
I also have a question, Violet. Were you aware of any other factors such as poor positioning in the first labor, or, was there anything else where when the baby came out you thought, oh, okay, well, that's why she wasn't progressing, or, a really huge baby or a posterior baby or something else, or was it your feeling that it really was mental?
I didn't pick up on any positioning issues with the first baby. There wasn't any meconium situations. There wasn't an excessively large baby. I just felt that she, to be honest, I just felt she wasn't really. I thought I would have liked to have been able to work with her a little bit longer before they drew the line, but because you had the broken water issues, she was on the clock.
Right.
I would have liked for her to be given a longer opportunity, and that's not to say that she would have been able to get any further. But at the time, I do remember thinking, we really might should consider asking for a little bit more time. But she was already.
She was done. Yeah.
She was done mentally, physically. She was just wanting to be in a different place. So we just, supported that decision for her. But jumping to the second birth, the midwife specifically pulled me aside and in the hallway, and she said, we're not making a lot of progress here, but she really is holding things back. She really needs to let go. She's having difficulty just kind of releasing herself, and I'm not quite sure why. And I would not have brought this up in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, wow, this is almost looking exactly like number one. But then later on, this was probably about 2 or 3 hours after the midwife and I had this brief, powwow. We even did we spent some time doing the rebozo, doing the baby sifting, having Mom on hands and knees. Mom walked around a lot. Mom did a lot of time on the birth ball. We did some positioning, some lunges, different things like that to try to just shake things up a little bit. But at some point, there were some D cells going on, but the baby's heart rate would, after the contraction, rise back up to normal, comfortable levels. But at one point, she did have some D cells that did not come back up quickly enough, so the particular midwife became very concerned and started to try to stimulate the baby's scalp, and in so doing, didn't get the response she was looking for, so immediately they went to C-section mode.
Okay.
So if it was just, just the fetal, distress issue and the midwife not having told me what she told me, then I probably wouldn't have thought too big a deal of it. But the fact that the midwife had said, a few hours prior to making the C-section decision, hey, we've got some serious holdups here that, we've got to work through, I wouldn't have connected that, the fear issue was still a problem for her.
When the midwife suggested to you that it possibly was, a holdup emotionally, the psyche aspect of it, did you two discuss what, besides positions, and, which sounded great, you were doing lots of different positions and such with her, about how to address perhaps what she was holding on to?
I'm sorry, Therese, can you just repeat that all over again?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Hey, Sarah, can you repeat it? My mic, by the way, everyone, I'm sorry, is a little iffy today.
Okay.
So I think, Therese, you were asking if you said the midwife talked about different positions and you tried different things. Was there anything else the midwife talked about with her?
As far as examples of how maybe to help her release what emotionally she was feeling.
Did the midwife talk to her about emotional release in addition to different physical positions?
Or the two of them?
Right.
Not that I saw. I had been out of the room when I had just been coming back from a restroom break, and the midwife had just walked out of the room, so I don't know what exactly happened prior to the midwife coming out of the room. But when, we both met at the door, so to speak, was when she told me what she told me. So I don't know if she had already addressed anything with her or not, but to my knowledge, no.
And then so she didn't suggest to you that maybe there were some things you could do to help address the emotional aspects of this? I mean, if she's thinking that she's holding back, were there solutions about helping her release?
Well, she didn't give me any specific instructions, but, when I went back into the room, I just kind of tried to, talk a little bit with her, why don't we try singing some songs, and why don't we just try to relax a little bit. But they were very vague in general. It wasn't, well, so-and-so told me you're having, trouble reading.
Right.
No, I didn't expect you would do that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just
she just couldn't get over it. Again, she just couldn't lose herself, and she couldn't surrender to the labor.
I don't think she could, and it was, it overall, in my opinion, the birth atmosphere for her second birth was much more peaceful. There was a lot less anxiety and tenseness in the air.
Were there less people there? Was her family there this time?
Her family was there this time, but, as I said, in the first birth, her dad is a very, very strengthening, motivating, encouraging person in her life. She's very, very reassured and nurtured by her dad in a good way, in a positive way. And that seems to have translated to both her and her husband as a couple, as a unit. They draw a lot of strength from him in a good, positive way. So I think the atmosphere was a bit more relaxed and peaceful compared to the first one. Not that the first one was, high anxiety, but it was a different tone. So I think, again, there was a lot of singing. There was scripture being spoken and out loud to her, and she was comforted by having her dad and her mom in the room along with her husband. So I'm not quite sure where it's coming from or why it's coming from. She never expressed any history that would be concerning, so we didn't have that factor. From my understanding, I didn't at that point in time. I hadn't had any training, in terms of any survivors training, but I had since, had some training, and in hindsight, there might be some general questions that I might should
Okay.
have shared. So, perhaps in the future, I'll just kind of make that a normal protocol for my prenatals, but it wasn't something that had come up with her.
We actually have an episode on working with survivors of abuse, and one of, not saying that she was, because I think it's very possible that she has
a personality.
Yeah, we talked also about, once we did an episode about working with type A moms that are just anxious about everything. But in the episode about working with survivors of abuse, one of the things we talked about is sort of in prenatals giving people the opportunity to tell you, because there may be people who are survivors who don't want to discuss it.
Exactly.
And there may be people who are survivors who will, if given the opportunity. And so, for those listening now, if you're interested in this topic, you can go back and listen to that episode for some ideas on how to work that into a prenatal.
I think.
Wow.
I think with a situation like what you are bringing up to us, Violet, which I think is a really good example of clients that anybody could have. I do think that an important part of prenatal visits is the discussion about worries and fears and concerns. And it doesn't even have to address abuse, as Sarah just pointed out. There's a line of how to introduce that into the topic, into your conversations. But we do need to address people's personalities and their worries and their concerns and their fears. I mean, it's something we talk about in workshops, that it is an important thing because, prenatally, it's important because if we can help our client possibly work through some of their worries and concerns and their fears, they may not arise in the labor. Even if we can't, quote unquote, cure them of things, because we're not necessarily that powerful, it's that there's an awareness then in us.
I like that you said we're not necessarily that powerful.
Yeah.
Like maybe we are, maybe we aren't.
Right. Actually, I meant they aren't maybe at that place of receiving that. But we do know what to expect from that person, instead of wondering, is this going to be an issue in labor? Is this going to be it's warning flags too, because then we know if somebody is extremely anxious, just overall about everything, not even anything specific, or will pick out specific things, but their overall attitude is fear. Then we know that creating that calm, safe environment, which we do anyway, is really important, though, in that structure of the setting wherever they're giving birth. And I know, and I'm not criticizing her family per se, but I wonder, as much as her father was this reassuring person in her life, I guess what goes through my mind just for the moment, being always trying to look at the other side of things, I wonder if it was pressure on her to have people witnessing her in her weakness, in her vulnerability. And
there could also be a modesty issue. Is it typical where you live for male older relatives to be present for birth?
No. Yeah. As a matter of fact, that was my first.
Right. And that, I thought the same thing, Sarah. Like, if my dad were in the room with me when I was giving birth, I think I would have lost my inhibition, but he might have prevented me from losing my inhibition, only because that wasn't my relationship with my father, to be so primal, to be so vulnerable, to be so naked, either literally or figuratively, in my way of doing things. And I could be my dad could be incredibly supportive. So I feel like, I wonder, as much as that person, her dad, was this powerful influence in her life, maybe it should have been outside of the room, not inside the room. It could have been an inhibitor, as much as she saw it potentially as a strength. It could have held her back.
I'm with you. My personality wouldn't jive with that kind of setting. I couldn't even have my mom in the same room.
No, me either.
So I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, no, I don't think you.
Point.
Yeah, I don't think you have to answer the question. I think it's something that we're using as an example with the listeners also, that when you have a client who is talking about who they're going to have at their birth, and they give you the example, well, my father is going to be there, and my father is this really strong, reassuring person in my life, and I really want him there. We should bring up, well, that is wonderful, that it sounds really great, but here's what I want you to be envisioning. Your father will be there when you are going to need to let go, to be primal, to be, you have to let go of your modesty and your, you have to be able to open up, literally, and in every single way. And could this possibly be a hindrance? I don't necessarily say this to everyone, but I could see this as an example. Like, would you have your father there when you were having sex? I mean, the answer probably is going to be no, but people do not think of birth and sex as very similar experiences, which they...
But the sounds are the
Well, they are. And it is a very similar experience. It's very intimate. It's very... we know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Violet, I'm reminded of... I think part of what we're talking about is sort of, working through a birth that was difficult for you. And so we're just suggesting things for people listening that might be facing the same thing. So when they find themselves in the same situation. And I'm reminded of when I was at my sister-in-law's birth. We're very close, and me and her partner were the only people at the birth. And we were at her home, laboring at home. And because she lived far away, I was there a little bit early. And she just was having a little trouble kind of crossing the crossing into really, really active labor. And so I left, and I said, you guys do this for a while by yourselves. You guys hang out, go take a walk. And as soon as I left, she would kick into gear. And then as soon as I would come back, she would slow down again. And then I would leave, and she would kick into gear. And this is someone that loves me. I know she loves me, and I love her. And she had asked me to be her doula. It was an amazing honor. But she needed to get to a certain point where she couldn't, her mind was out of the way. And once she got to, I would guess 7-8 centimeters. I don't know, because we were at home, but, then it stopped. It stopped, then she needed me to help her work through contractions.
You weren't a hindrance.
I wasn't a hindrance. And I think about in hospitals, we've talked in previous episodes about sending the mom and partner into the bathroom together. Now it's more complicated if she has an epidural and she can't move. But I wonder, for people listening, if you find yourself in a situation where the woman can't let go, clearing
the space.
I also think what was occurring to me listening to Therese talking to you, Violet, was at the end of the day, it's her choice. And I had a client once who wanted her husband, her best friend, her husband's best friend, and his wife all in the room, and she was planning a natural labor. And I talked to her and talked to her and talked to her, and she said, "No, you don't understand. This is what I want." And I thought, it is okay.
That's it. Well,
I shared with you the information that what I always say is not necessarily, would you want to have sex in front of these people? But
no, I wouldn't necessarily say it to everyone.
I sometimes have said, do you want to poop in front of your husband's best friend's wife? And she said, nope, it's good. It's all good. And in that case, I do feel like their presence inhibited her ability to let go. But I also feel like I informed her of that possibility, and she made the choice.
Right. And, we're kind of going off on a tangent with this, Violet. So we'll come back also to the fears. But I think as a doula, you did the right thing. Sarah, in your case, what you were describing, you made it known that this could be an inhibitor. But I do think, in the end, it's their choice totally. But if we see that somebody, or we're worried that somebody is an inhibitor, I do think we have to, that's what we're there for also, is to kind of redirect that energy.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
In the case I'm talking about, I sort of felt like we talked about it so much, I didn't feel...
That you needed to direct it?
Well, no. In talking about it now, I think I should have.
Yeah, but you didn't at the
moment,
time.
I felt like, look, I already told you about this, and they're here now, and
Yeah,
but
so I can't help.
It's a good reminder.
But over and above that, I think you were dealing with a client who had, like you said, just inordinate amount of fears inside of her. And what the root of those are, we don't know. You don't know. I mean, it could have been an abusive situation at some time in her life. It could just be she had a childhood experience of, being sick or in a hospital, or somebody else that scared her as a child, and then she carries that forward with her. It could be just that she has had a dip in her psyche where everything is she's just hyper vigilant to things, and that can be hormonal imbalances in people or shifts, or who knows. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I think the key, if you were to have her a third time, let me ask you, if she asks you again for to support her, even through, in this case, I guess she would schedule another C-section, because she still could try for a VBAC, because after 2 C-sections, you can still attempt a VBAC if you find the right provider, according to ACOG guidelines. But
right.
So let's just say that she is now pregnant a third time. She does want to try for a VBAC one more time. I'm going to ask you this. What would you do differently prenatally to work with her, do you think? Any ideas?
Well, I do feel that personality-wise, she is the type of person that has control issues, and when she's not in control, it makes her feel very tense and anxious. So I think I would probably have to work through, and I'm not even sure how I would do that, but I would have to work through her need to control situations and how that is not going to be possible in the laboring environment. So I think maybe, I don't even know if I'm touching on it.
I think you're right. I think
just know that's her personality, and it manifested itself, in her labor scenarios. But I'm not clear on how I would work through that. I would have to do some research and try to maybe do some personality assessments, and how to work with different personalities in those kinds of situations. I'm not even. I think
the other part of it is helping. I think for a lot of people, being asked the question and being allowed to give responses to it, like, well, client A, do you know why you feel this way, or what triggers that sensation inside of you, or what do you feel when you are having those worries, or do you have any idea where this might have begun, or how long have you been feeling these things, or what do you think would happen if you saw, for instance, a needle? What do you think we could do to help you other than not seeing them? There's a possibility that you would, if you're going to have a VBAC, you're probably going to need an IV. And so what coping skills can we work on? Would breathing, praying, singing help you? Would a touch help you? I mean, we're giving those kinds of questions and waiting for responses. I think most people have the answers inside of them. They just need the opportunity to be heard. And then we can have resources available. We could say even, is there anybody you would like to talk to about this specifically? A more, since I'm not a professional counselor, is there anyone that I can help you find? Or do you know of anyone that you feel safe with who can be impartial but is a professional? And if she's coming from a Christian background, it may be someone a Christian counselor, or, but not just a trusted friend is wonderful, and a trusted doula is wonderful as well. But I think always to recommend a professional that they can feel counseled by, because in the end, we're not counselors. We're counseling them to find counseling if need be. But I think, we live in a culture where this is not an uncommon experience. A lot of anxiety is present in people's lives at this point. Mm-hmm. And birth can trigger, labor can exacerbate somebody's anxiety levels because of all the sensations and that lack of control, like you talked about. She couldn't control it. So therefore it's out of control. And maybe you can't, fix it, but you can give her the opportunity to express what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the future, and I do expect if they were to have another child, I do expect they would call me based on some things that she mentioned to me. So, in light of the suggestion you made a little while ago that perhaps her father may have been inhibiting things, how do you approach that tactfully?
Yeah, good question. I think I would do it, obviously, just like you said, tactfully. I would say, I would be very forthright with it, though. I wouldn't, skirt the issue. I would say, I don't know if this is a fact or not, but I wanted to put it out there to you, and I wanted you to consider it, and then, give me your input, or, either which way about how you feel about this. But I know that your father is this very supportive person, and he seems to be have somewhat of calming effect on you when he was present during your labors. You could talk to her about inhibitions and vulnerability and the primalness, and maybe that if her father, would she consider having her father, holding that prayer space for her outside of the room.
I was also going to suggest, if you feel like that might be a sensitive issue, instead of coming at it directly from the father, because it could be the mother. I mean, it could be, we're assuming the father, and maybe that's a little unfair. And
thank you for just saying that real quickly. I didn't realize the mother was there because we didn't hear about the mother. I just heard the father. So you're right.
So what I was going to say is, rather than specifically addressing the father, you could just say, I have an idea that I wonder if you'd be willing to try, which is just you and your husband, because you have this. So rather than saying the father shouldn't be there, put the focus on the relationship between them and the strong bond that they have, and give your husband a chance to show up for you in that role and to be your main support.
That's good, Sarah.
And
that's a good point.
Kind of focus on the positive rather than the negative, and say, you could have all the people there in the hospital that you want praying for you, lighting candles for you, sending you that energy, but let's give your husband the chance to be that support for you, and let's see if you calm down. And you know what? If you get in there and she's way more anxious without her dad there, then bring her dad in.
I do think, and I totally agree with you, Sarah, but I do think it's okay to also bring up
to be more direct.
Yeah, because I do want the person to consider that those people may be inhibiting her ability to let go.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think that you're right on. That's a good way to do it, but add that other part in still as well.
I wanted to share with you, Violet, I had an experience about 3 years ago, very similar in so many ways. And the woman she just couldn't, I wouldn't say that the anxiety, it was so much anxiety. It was more, she just couldn't let go. And every time she would start to feel out of control, she would tense up, and I was saying to her, you need to let go. You need to surrender to this. And she finally said to me, you just want to see me cry. And I said, I don't want to see you cry. I but the way that she said that made me think she was so afraid to release, that she probably did need to cry. Mm-hmm. She needed to go, oh my gosh, I'm totally out of control. This hurts so much. There's nothing I can do about it. And she needed to get past this hump of, she was a real, she organized everything in her life. Everything was under her control. And this was not. And I will admit to you guys and to our listeners, I'm not proud of this. So she moved away, and she just had her second baby with another doula. And she called me and she said, that she had had a beautiful healing birth, and that my first thought was, well, why couldn't I do that for you? Which is so unattractive. And I'm admitting it to you guys, to the listeners, because maybe some of you can relate. I did not say that to her. What I said is, oh, I'm so happy for you. I'm thrilled. But I had this little twinge of like...
But you set her on the pathway.
Well, maybe that's it. Or maybe having a kid for 3 years made her relax a little bit.
Right.
Who knows what it was. But I found it very unattractive quality in myself that I immediately went to...
We forgive you.
This was my fault that you didn't do it the first time. And now it's my fault you didn't do it the second time. You had a better doula. And I was, But I will admit to feeling that. It was a very unattractive moment. But I was thrilled for her, actually, that she was able... and the other thing is, who knows what the difference in the baby and the difference in what that experience of labor was like. And I had one client, the midwife said, wow, you have a really tough cervix. And, you are acting when you're 2 centimeters, you're acting like you're 7 centimeters. And so you're acting like you're in transition and your body feels like you're in transition. But you're not. And she did some acupressure and some herbs and things. And I think how many other factors like that were going on. Maybe it could have been abuse. It could have been an anxiety disorder. It could have been a tense woman. It could have been a malpositioned baby.
Yes.
It could have been or it could have been all of the above.
Well, and it can also be a prima gravida. With the first baby, it just was going to take time.
Yeah.
Period. If she only got to 4 centimeters, that. And it was the water had broken and there was a clock ticking. Like Violet brought up, it could be that there just wasn't time given for this labor to occur.
Right.
I was also thinking that part of my working with her is going to have to be helping her to feel as much peace and tranquility being vulnerable.
Yes.
Because even as I look back at my own birth experiences, I've had 13 children, my ability to be vulnerable and wide open is very, very diminished. So I have a hard time, and my labors are lengthy and all that jazz. So I'm wondering how to translate that to this particular client, since she does have, what I perceive as control issues, where she struggles not being in control.
Right. And I have shared this as well, Violet, that I found the word, prior to ever having children, I found the word surrender kind of a dirty word. Like it was, you don't surrender. You keep fighting, you keep moving, you keep doing. That's what surrender meant to me. And be in control. I mean, I had to be in control of things. And when I
surrender is a failure, it feels like
exactly.
Sometimes.
And so, but when I gave birth, I realized that surrender was one of the most beautiful words, that I needed to surrender to the immense power that was coursing through my body, and that my baby was also part of the picture, that I wasn't the only one, in control of this. There was no control. And once I surrendered, I gave birth, and it was it was something that I've carried with me through the rest of my life, of understanding when surrender is a really powerful thing instead of a failure, like Sarah just mentioned. And I think that's something that you're describing, that's that vulnerability, that allowing yourself to open up and not being afraid of it, realizing that what you're feeling inside is you. It is you, and you are allowing it to happen. It's not happening to you. It is you
You're surrendering to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder too, Violet, if it would make sense to reach out to her and have a conversation about this kind of stuff, just as kind of a follow-up postpartum. How are you feeling a few months later? And to talk to her about, I know that you're a 2-labor trained doula, and that Therese talks often about birth as a pathway to parenthood. And to make that connection for her, as a mother of 13 children, how much surrender you have to do. There's times with your children when you have to fight for them, and there's times when you have to surrender to them, to who they are, to who you are, to your strengths and weaknesses as a mother. And I wonder if, having 2 children now, if she would be able to relate to that
in a different way.
In a different way. I don't know.
Well, I've thought on and off about that. And what relates to this particular thought is, am I at liberty to share what was shared with me? Because I don't feel that I am, as far as the midwife's concerned.
Oh, no. I would say you talk about it from your own perspective. Yeah. I would not say you say, hey, the midwife told me this.
That's what I thought.
You would say, I noticed, I wondered if I would even ask her, I wonder if you think that I just would be really careful. I don't want her to feel blamed. I don't want her to leave the conversation feeling like if I hadn't been so tense, I wouldn't have had a C-section.
Right. I would approach it as just a follow-up. If you're going to do anything like this, a follow-up with it, checking in to see how you're doing. How long has it been since this birth?
Okay, this birth was, I would say less than 2 months ago.
Okay. So it's a good time to check in. So how are you doing? How are you feeling? How are just the overall, how are things going now that you've got 2 kids, and what do you and then say, I just would love to talk if you're interested. You make the call, but do you want to talk about your experience in the labor and the birth at all? And just listen to her story.
Yeah, she may need to forgive herself too. I mean,
or maybe she's totally okay.
Yeah,
you know. I mean,
I know that she's not. I can be honest. I know that she's not, because during our postpartum, she broke down in tears and she said, "If I have another baby, I don't want to go through this again. I want to be able to have normal." What she said is normal birth. And so I know she's struggling. I've reached out to her a couple of times, after the prenatal, because I thought, maybe there's some baby blues going on in conjunction with her birth experience. And she hasn't returned my phone calls, and she texts, "Oh, I can't talk right now, call you later." And so nothing else has happened beyond that postpartum visit. So I feel that perhaps that would be a wise move. But I don't know if she's pushing me away because she's not ready.
Well, and that all you can do is you could just contact her one more time, and you can just say, "Hey, I'm no pressure. Just wanted to know you to know that I'm available. I would love to talk to you about anything, about parenting, about, if you're, not now, I'm sure you're not thinking about having another baby, but in the future," and then just leave it at that. I wouldn't pick, what I call it this, we don't ever want to be this is very gross, but very appropriate. You don't want to be a scab picker. You don't want to pick the scab off. If it's starting to heal, then that's where it needs to be. But I don't think it's a bad idea, Violet, to reach out again. And then if she again says, "No, I'm not available to talk," or anything, don't, just leave it as that. And
it's not your job to save her.
No, that's it. And then
I'm not sure how to approach the issue without her feeling any blame or guilt.
Well, yeah.
But if you go back and discuss the previous 2 C-sections and talk about vulnerability, releasing, surrendering, and it automatically applies to her history. So,
I think that you do that. Here's my real feeling. I would just, if you're going to talk to her, say she says, "Yes, I'd love to talk to you, Violet," and she calls you or you guys meet, and then I would just ask about parenting and how she's feeling and how the recovery from the C-section this time around has been, and that's it. And just let her, she may then start talking about her cesarean and how she's thinking about the next baby and her plans, and you're just listening. I wouldn't necessarily open up about her labor and birth. The difference is,
she may not need to hear what you think about it at all. She may need to hear from you.
I don't think she needs to hear what you think.
That it's okay that she had a C-section, that she did her best with the resources that she had. She did her best, and that this is, in 20 years, this is all part of her. She's going to look back, and this is part of her journey. And but right now, she's allowed to grieve.
Right, if that's how she feels.
If that's how she feels, but that. She doesn't. You said something about her dad saying to her, like, her promises that she had to keep, and that triggered for me.
Right. Both Sarah and I looked at each other at that moment.
Sorry, Sarah. Let me just clarify. Well, the promises that he would refer to were scriptural promises.
Okay, not a promise. I mean,
no.
Not related
to. That was too vague.
Okay, no, it's okay. I just wondered if, I think that support. I've seen this happen. I've talked about it. Support for natural birth can so easily veer into like a guilt trip, an expectation. And the people in the room don't even know they're doing it. I've been there so many times when the partner is going, you can do it, honey. You can do it. I know it. I believe in you. And something changes and I know she's done and she needs permission to be done. And the partner doesn't know she's done. And the partner is like, you can do it. I know you can do it. You can do it if you really want to. And she's, so I just wonder if she needs to be forgiven by herself.
Well, and that's how I would handle postpartum. If she hires you, though, again, for another birth, again, treading very gently, I would then I would ask her questions, like we already discussed, about how she felt during that experience. Is there anything we can do differently based on what she's telling you? I would bring up about, like Sarah said, about the partner and her just having this experience together, because this is their time to really lean on each other. And then also talk about the vulnerability of labor and birth, and that, as you could say, not only at your birth, but at many people's births that I've been to, I've seen where people who are so supportive are present, but in the end can sometimes be an obstruction to moving forward, only because the laboring woman, such as you and others, so you're including other people, not just talking about her specifically,
right,
can't totally let go, which is what we need to do. We have to let go of our inhibitions. And is this something you want to consider, for instance, with your family being present instead of them being there in the room? Perhaps this time, is it something you want to consider is that they are praying for you outside of the space, either at their home or in another environment where if you really felt you needed them to come in, they could come, but they're not there the entire time. Because sometimes, and I've said this to people, sometimes you can end up feeling like a watched pot. And as much as they are not, that is not their intention, we in our minds sometimes can feel like we have to perform for those people, or we're holding them up, or we're taking too much time. And I would just bring it up in a general sense also, not just targeting her, but including her as the example, but other people, because the truth is, you're not lying. It's true of many other people.
Right.
So
myself included.
Yes, exactly. So you can just, we just want to be really careful not to imply that we think they did it wrong or did something, they could do it different to, make it better for everybody else. So you open the door with questions and you let them lead you through it to decide what are the next questions and what your answers are.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I really appreciate that. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, I think, Violet, you gave us a really good stories today. I think, addressing concerns, worries, fears is something that we do talk about. Like I said, in the workshop, we do a whole exercise around it. And I think it's a really important reminder to everyone who's listening is this isn't something we don't want to address. We do want to meet the person that we're working with where they are and know who we're dealing with. And if you're dealing with somebody who, in this case, sounded like a very anxious person, what are some of the tools we can bring into it prenatally to help them feel more comfortable? And in the end, we can't control anything. We can't make it one way or the other. We can just create the space. So thank you so much for spending some time this morning with us. And
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's been really helpful for me personally.
Great.
On to her, yes. So thank
Wonderful.
you so much, both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
You're
Violet.
welcome.
Take care. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. You guys too.
Bye.
Bye.